Hello, and welcome to Wellness Shots with Jewel. My next episode with Chef AJ. I apologize for technical difficulties I experienced today. We tried to go live and we couldn't, but we always find a solution. So we're recording this interview. Thank you, Chef AJ, for being so patient and stay with me through this challenge. Welcome to this episode.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me. And what choice do I have to be patient when I've been in the same situation as you more than once, especially when I recently interviewed Dr. McDougall, so I know how frustrating it is. And if I get mad and yell, it's, first of all, not going to help anything. And we'll just both end up being upset. So I understand. It's very frustrating when technology doesn't work. But so many people are using Zoom now just to connect with family and teach schools. So, it's back like when we had dial-up, remember?
Exactly. Yes. Thank you for understanding. So since we finally have you here, I would love to ask you a question. First of all, I want to tell you happy birthday, happy belated birthday. Some of the people in my group said to say that to you. So happy belated birthday. I believe you were supposed to celebrate it in a different place.
Absolutely. We were supposed to be at Balance for Life in Florida with Dr. Doug Lyle, Dr. Frank Sabatino, and Dr. Stefan Essert, but nature had other plans. And as far as being in your group, I believe I'm in your group. I'm not very active on Facebook, but I'm in your group. So thank you very much for the wishes. I'll even though it was not a memorable birthday in some ways, it was my 60th birthday. I'll always remember celebrating my 60th birthday and 25th wedding anniversary 10 days later, doing nothing except being with my loved ones.
So how are you holding back? How are you holding through this pandemic?
I'm doing well, and it's really weird, but I'm a big fan of Dr. Lyle, as you know, and I listen religiously to his podcast, which is called Beat Your Genes, which is every Wednesday night. There's over 200 episodes, and I've worked with him privately. And, he talks about what's called the perfect personality. And by that doesn't mean that if your personality isn't a certain way, you're not perfect. You are perfect for who you are, but that we all have different personalities. And one of the talks he gives when it comes to diet is that Dr. Goldhammer is the only one that has the perfect personality to eat 100% perfectly 100% of the time. And that this is very difficult to do for most of us. But our personality affects us in different ways. And one of the points of the personality quiz that he talks about, which people can look up, it's called the Big Five, and give yourself the test on these points, is introversion and extroversion. And people often think that just because somebody can talk in front of thousands of people or do, videos, that they're extroverted. And I'm not. I'm outgoing because I've learned this, but I'm actually an introvert. And so for sure whether you're an introvert or an extrovert based on how you're responding. And this, I'm kind of simplifying it because of course this exists on a continuum, but I don't like that people are dying, scared, sick, losing jobs. Don't get me wrong, but this feels good to me, this having to be at home, not traveling, not having to interact so much. People that are introverted generally get their energy drained when they're around people. People that are extroverted generally get more energy from being around people. So the people that are extroverted, or people that live alone, especially that are extroverted, are really suffering right now from the lack of in-person human connection, which is why people like you and me are going live so much to try to create at least an online connection. So for that part, it's been very good for my nervous system, the quieting of the world. It just feels good to me. However, I understand that things are going to have to get back to the way they were at some point, because people just can't stay at home and not work forever. I work at home, so it doesn't feel that different to me, other than all my jobs were canceled because nobody can travel or have a conference right now. But I feel like we have to look at this, and we don't have a choice. So why not make the best of it? When life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Even if you are an extrovert, you can set up Zoom, you can see your loved ones as much as you want, and it's basically free unless you need to talk for, I guess, longer than 30 minutes. But this is a time that we can really do something that we wanted to do, like, for example, eat better, or exercise, or read that book you didn't ever had a chance to read, or clean out that sock drawer. So I've always been an eternal optimist, and as bad as things are, and they are very bad for some people, and they may get worse, I can't go out and volunteer right now. I was doing volunteer work at hospitals, nursing homes, and schools. And even before the sheltering took place, we were told that we're on furlough. So, you know, I'm making the best of it, but I am enjoying the quietness of the stillness of the world right now when you go outside. And it feels like the planet in many ways is healing, you know, like they're saying that the sky is less polluted because of the cars not being on the road and the planes. So I am enjoying it, and I kind of feel guilty that I am enjoying it so much, to be honest. So thanks for asking. That was a long answer. I apologize.
I totally hear you. I feel the same way. I think this is the time we can work on ourselves and on our house, on even on our. The most important thing that you teach is to clean your environment. So this is a good time to clean the environment. But for some people, I see some people go back into bad habits during this time. And knowing you, the way that my perspective, how you deal with stress, you just mentioned that you go volunteer and now you can. So what's your way of dealing with stress right now in shelter in place?
Well, I was very fortunate to a long time ago get a spin bike, and I just get on the bike, and I'll tell you, it's very hard to be stressed when you're sweating profusely because you've been on the bike for an hour. As a matter of fact, I actually only did 40 minutes, but still, even 30 minutes is good. So exercise, I think, is a great way. Not everybody has exercise equipment in their home, but they have a body and they can turn on a free video on YouTube or go to Fitness Blender, and they can dance and they can just use their body. And sweating is, I think, one of the best things you can do because it detoxifies you, but it also just calms you down. I mean, for me, that it's a non-negotiable. You know, I didn't start exercising until I was probably 52. And like I said, I work with Dr. Lyle. He's my psychologist, and he said it's non-negotiable for me. He says that is your psychiatric medicine. And so it's just something that became a habit a long time ago, that's what I do if I'm stressed, or I go outside and we're still allowed to go outside, at least where I live. And, we wear our mask, and I walk my dog, and it's beautiful outside. It's just quiet. It's still, I hear the pigeons are starving because there's, all the people aren't eating at like McDonald's and leaving crumbs for them. So I'm going to start carrying maybe some bird seed with me if I can get some. I think I have some millet that might work, but that's what I do, and when you're stressed, you have to find ways to deal with stress before the stress happens. And that's why I'm a big fan of building, sustainable habits and exercise. When I teach people for weight loss and managing food addictions, I'm not telling them to exercise because it's going to help them lose weight, because really it's very negligible. There was an article in the Scientific American Journal that showed it really contributes negligibly to weight loss. It's much more helpful for weight management, but it does dial down your stress, and it also increases your self-esteem, which helps you stick to a healthy eating plan. So, people, I understand there's going to be certain people with certain conditions that maybe can't do certain types of exercises, but I've never met anybody, even people in a wheelchair, that there's something they can't do. And that's where John Pierre is so helpful, because he's had clients that are paraplegics that he still can work with. But this is the time now. I mean, obviously, if you're a first responder, obviously I'm not talking to you, but those of us that have been sheltering at home now for a month, imagine what you could have done if you had done this every day instead of reverting to, oh, I'm so stressed, I'm going to eat junk. It's sort of like when people give up at Christmas or before Christmas. A lot of times they start at Halloween to relapse or to have a slip. And then they, instead of saying, wow, I had a Snickers, okay, I'm going to get back on plan, they're like, the heck with it until January 2nd. And then, they wake up January 2nd, 15 pounds heavier. Well, I'm worried about the people that this is going to be them during the coronavirus. They're saying, oh, well, I'm too stressed now, even though there's different kinds of stress. I'm not talking about first responders. My heart and my thanks goes out to all the doctors and nurses and respiratory therapists and all the people that are having to work right now. But I'm talking about those of you that are not having to work right now or getting to work at home. There's really no excuse now to not find some time in your day to exercise. You don't have the commute anymore. And as far as eating crap, who bought that crap into your house? People said, well, I can't find salt-free organic beans, so I'm going to eat Doritos. It's not a question of that. Any whole plant food you can eat right now, whether organic or not, is fine. White rice is fine. Potatoes are fine. So you've got some time now, and you have to choose how you're going to use this time, and you can use it to revert back into bad habits, or you can create some new ones. And I would say though, and you know how I feel about Dr. Lyle and his take on emotional eating. These people are saying, well, I'm so stressed now, I'm going to eat crap. They eat crap when they're not stressed too, you know.
So you've been working with Dr. Lyle for a long time, and it all comes, what I hear you say, it all comes to managing your mind, and in this situation specifically. But what I find now during this shelter in place time, people stuck at home with their loved ones, and those loved ones, they used to go to work, so there were less distraction, and not everyone not everyone's spouse or a partner eats the same way we eat or the same way we try to eat. And now we are all stuck in a house together. There is more trigger food. And it's very hard for some people to say no to the husband and tell him to throw everything out. So is there any hope from like Dr. Lyle's perspective, from your perspective, how to deal with this situation right now?
Well, first of all, I think there's always hope. But when you're talking about individual personalities, we can't give just one answer that's going to work for everyone. That's why I recommend to people that are very serious about having a clean environment, but have not been able to navigate it through the normal channels of conversation, which should be, hey, honey, it's really hard for me when you have these foods, and I want to be healthy and around for you guys long enough. Please eat them outside of the home, which I understand now is harder to eat them outside of the home, but there may be other areas of the home like the backyard, the basement, the garage, things like that. They sometimes have to have a session with either Dr. Lyle or Dr. Hawk. It's very affordable. It's $75 at esteemdynamics.com, because what he has done is he works with the family unit, because different personalities are going to respond different. If somebody, usually what we find, or what I have found, is it's a very kind, sweet, agreeable woman married to a very disagreeable man. So it's not like the husband has always been accommodating, and this is the one area that's the holdout. It's usually this again comes back to the perfect personality talk that Dr. Lyle gives. It's usually a very agreeable, people-pleasing kind of woman with a very disagreeable or more disagreeable husband. And so what Dr. Lyle does is he, with the unique personalities in mind, gives you strategies and tells you ways to talk to them to at least navigate a clean environment for a short period of time as an experiment. And I find that has worked wonders with him. You know, I have a free webinar on my YouTube page called Mastering the Environment with him. But the thing is some women don't even ask. And if you don't ask, the answer is always going to be no. And if they will not eat the foods outside the house, then you've got to really just have laser beam focus on the fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes that you're going to eat, and at least try to separate their foods. If you can't get a separate refrigerator and locked cabinet, then different shelves, or put theirs in a brown paper bag so you don't have to look at it. You know, it really just depends how bad you want this and how much effort you're going to put into getting the clean environment. But I'll tell you, with a clean environment, I won't say that anybody, if you have an unclean environment, you're going to fail, because that's not true. It's just going to be exceedingly more difficult. But I can tell you that everybody I've known in a clean environment has succeeded. So again, it comes down to the first thing I ever heard out of Dr. Lyle's mouth in 2011 when I was a patient at True North was, we must work harder on our environment than we do ourselves. The number one rule for healthy living is no junk food in the house. And that environment comes to everything. You know, the only reason I'm able to exercise now is because I, in advance, thought that this is something that needed to be in my environment, because it was too much effort to have to go to the gym, drive to the gym, pay the money to the gym, fight for a parking space, hope that I get a bike in the spin class. And Dr. Lyle was the one that actually insisted that I get a bike. And, you know, I found a used one that was very affordable, and it worked out great. So, you know, having the bike in my environment, the only place it fits in my house is by my bed. So guess what? The first thing I see when I get up in the morning is the spin bike. And it's the second thing I do. I have to walk my dog first because of the weather being so hot. But, you know, really you have to create an environment that's going to be conducive to your recovery and to the goals that you want to set. But it really does come down to environment. But people get mad when I say that, because they're in a situation, unfortunately, that isn't conducive. But, you know, anytime they go to True North and they are in a clean environment, they realize, wow, makes a difference, really does.
And it's possible. It's possible.
I think it is
I,
possible. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but it is possible. But if you've never even had that conversation, then it's definitely not going to be possible. And sometimes it just, you know, a lot of times people are ashamed that maybe they have these food addictions and they don't even want to discuss it, or maybe on some level they kind of are want the foods in the house. And it's going to be different for everybody, but it's certainly worth a try, and it's certainly worth, you know, running an experiment, you know.
yeah, I see that a lot, that people are trying and then they make not a mistake, but they eat something out of the plan and then they go into hiding.
Yeah, that is a whole, it's so funny because I have this group called Feel Fabulous Over 40, and Dr. Lyle talks to us once a month. And this last talk, it was about people, and sometimes they're prominent people and sometimes they're just, you know, regular people that lose weight anywhere from a little bit to an extraordinary amount and then gain all or most of it back. And he talked about that. And it's, I think a lot of things are at play, because for some people, they're so vulnerable to the effect of food addiction that just a little bit sets them off. You know, there's just like there's some people that can drink alcohol occasionally and not have to have it all the time, and they don't become alcoholics. There are people for whom one drink, one drunk. And I think there's some people that are so sensitive to these processed foods, or, you know, whether it's cheese or something, one of these pleasure trap foods, that one bite, it really does set them off. And that's why it's important to know who you are, because if you're somebody that can have a little bit and be okay, and by okay, I mean be happy with your weight and whether, you know, your level of health, and not be always craving it, then I don't see anything wrong. You know, people think that I'm so like, you know, when I work with people privately, they're like, well, I can't believe you said I could have a little salt. And I'm like, well, you can, but you can't, because for you, you're able to do, you know, a quarter teaspoon a day on your kale. So I think you have to know who you are. And I think, listen to Jen Hawk. She would be a great wellness shot for you, because she is, and she says this, so I can say that she's a recovering alcoholic, I believe, of 8 years. She says relapse is part of recovery. So I think people hold themselves sometimes to the Goldhammer standard, the last guest you had. He's the only individual that I know that can be 100% of the time. So stop comparing yourself to him or to me or to anybody else. Be the best you can, and realize that, you know, these slips and relapses are going to happen far less often if it's not in your house. And try to think of this as you would alcoholism or drug addiction. If you got out of Betty Ford, would you let your family keep those things in the house? It's no different within food. And so I think when people understand this, but again, beating themselves up about a slip or a relapse isn't going to help them get back on track. That's for sure. Making the next meal healthy will, or waiting till, you know, hungry you eat. But I see this as a, you know, I see this as a big deal and a big problem for a lot of people. And I wish I had the answer, but I can tell you what worked for me and many others is a clean environment and having healthy food always ready, and learning to fall in love with the healthy food. I think a lot of people, they're stuck in both worlds. They have, Shada, who would be a great interview for you too. Shada always talks about having a foot in both worlds. Eventually you're going to slip. And so they want a trim body, they want a stable brain. And so they realize eating this way gets them that, but they still want this too. And they go back and forth. Well, if you can keep your weight stable and your cravings manageable doing that, that's fine. But for a lot of us, it's just not worth going back and forth, because we feel so much better staying here, because we've taken the time to neuroadapt and really love the food we eat, really fall in love. I mean, I love my food so much. Like I don't mean to say this, like I can't wait to say goodbye to you, only because I know what's ready for me at lunch, because it is lunchtime here. And I've got a roasted Hannah yam, which is my favorite of all the starches. And I probably have about 1.5 pounds of those. And I have a big thing of broccoli. And to me, that tastes like manna from heaven. But it's been 8 years of me not eating any junk food. And so, yeah, there are people are different. Some people are going to be able to eat a little of it, some people a lot of it. It really depends on how it makes you feel and what your goals are. And then just ask yourself, how do I want to feel? You know, it's interesting because I'm listening to this Raw Food Mastery Summit right now, and I find that sometimes I feel a little judgmental because these people are, I feel like, preaching 100% raw diet, and they've done it for 15 and 30 years, and like, well, I'm better than you because I don't eat cooked food and I don't eat starch. But then I say to myself, but you know what? They really feel that way. They feel better eating that way. So who am I to say my diet's better if you feel better eating your diet? I would just ask everyone, how do you feel? How do you feel eating the foods that you're eating? And then make your decision from there. Because if you, listen, I ate crap for 43 years, but I felt like crap. So, you know, just be honest with yourself. And abstinence is hard for most people. It's not a normal state of being for most people, but if you have an addiction, I can tell you it never doesn't work. And you have to decide for yourself, what are you willing to do? That's why I think it's so important to know why you're doing it in the first place. If you're trying to lose weight to fit into a dress for a reunion, you might, but then you're probably going to put it back on. So if you have what Dr. Roseanne Alviera, by the way, another great possible interview for you, says, the why that makes you cry, you might stick with it longer. It's hard. The pleasure trap is an insidious force that is just claiming victims. You know, this virus is too, but the pleasure trap claims lives every single day in the form of, you know, heart disease and diabetes and autoimmune disease. So I would say, you've got some time now, read The Pleasure Trap. If you don't like to read, it's available on Audible. I'm the voice actor. Really try to understand the pleasure trap, that it's not your fault if you have your hand in the cookie jar, that you were not designed for the current, again, the word environment, you weren't designed for the environment you're living in. You were designed for an environment of scarcity. So no reason to beat yourself up. That's like saying, well, gosh, you know, I keep blinking, you know, my eyes, I'm trying not to blink. Well, how long is that going to last? You are genetically hardwired to prefer the most concentrated source of calories in your environment. End of story. So it doesn't matter if you had a bad day or a good day, or had a bad childhood or a good childhood. When there's rich food in your environment, you are going to eat it. And you would be an extraordinary person if you could resist rich food in your environment long term. And so it has nothing to do with your will or your willpower or your, you know, or your intelligence. That's what we're supposed to do. Eat the richest food in our environment. That's why when you really can understand this and learn to control your environment, or at least give yourself the gift of a clean environment just for a short time to see what a difference it makes, then maybe you'll have the success that you want. It's not easy, but it's possible.
So good. So good. Thank you so much. I really want to be respectful of your time. I know that you're...
No, it's not a problem. I'll come back and do a live with your group. I'm happy to, and I'm sorry it didn't work today. But this happens to all of us now that are using Zoom, and it is frustrating. But since I'm on the other end, I'll be happy to come back and do a live. Maybe they could watch this video, and then they can ask questions either in general or based on what I said, and that would be fun.
Yes, we still recording. So after we complete with this recording, then we're going to talk about maybe rescheduling another time. But thank you so much for your time. It's really been a pleasure.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and because I really prefer answering questions verbally than if they type them on Facebook. So I'll come back and do a live.